Namaste. Welcome to another edition of Now Vimash podcast. So we are honored to have with us Mr. NITHIN SRIDHAR, who is a prolific writer and an Indic scholar. So you can see on my left side we have his book, a very new book. It's called Chatuh Shloki MANUSMRITI. It's an English commentary on the Manusmriti itself, and also a large portion of the book delves into the Dharmashâstras. That's why we have kept the podcast name itself, title, as Dharmashâstras as first principles and framework. So this book has a commentary, English commentary on 4 verses of Manusmriti. Maybe later he will write a few more books on Manusmriti itself. But this book contains his commentary, English commentary on the first 4 verses, and also a bit of discussion on the Dharmashastras, its principles, why it is required. So today we are going to discuss his book and his commentary on Manusmriti with us. So Namaste Sridharji.
Yeah, am I audible
Yeah,
now?
yes. Please go ahead. You're on. Yeah, please go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Namaste. Thank you for inviting me. Very glad to be here.
Yeah, so Sridharji, so like Manusmriti is a very controversial topic, politically, sociologically, and maybe a few other ways in terms of professional careers, reputations, which Manusmriti has due to 100 years or maybe 200 years of social political engineering in terms of the narrative which is built over the years. So, you being an Indic scholar, we have done some other very significant other works as well in the Indic sphere of scholarships. So, and you also working with Indica, indica.org, which is at the forefront of Indic knowledge system or IKS promotion. So, why you decided to write this book in the first place? If you can just give an overview of your intentions of this book being written.
Okay, okay. Thank you for the question. I think it is important to put forward a kind of a big picture, I would say. Uh, Before I share a bit about my own journey that eventually led to this book, it is important to understand that today we all speak of Indian knowledge system, IKS, or properly Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, right? And uh, it is very surprising to me. It is something beyond explainable to me that how can we speak of IKS Bharatiya Jnana Parampara when a particular, a very important limb of that IKS is ignored, sidelined, or tried to be whitewashed, or tried to be somehow or explained away or thrown away from the discussion. What I'm saying is about the Smriti tradition, the Dharmashâstra tradition, because in the what is the landscape of IKS? So from Mahabharata itself, we know that there are 14 plus 4, total of 18 Vidyasthanas. So that is one of the very good definition of what is the landscape of IKS, Bharatiya Jnana Parampara. And among those 18 Vidyasthanas, Dharmashastra is a Vidyasthana on its own. It is a independent Vidyasthana considered by Vyasa, Maharshi Vyasa, and it is explicitly mentioned as a Vidyasthana on its own. So how can we ignore it? Similarly, when we speak about the core Shastriya tradition, the core texts of Hindu Dharma, so we are not a book religion, but it is not that we have no textual tradition. We have a forest of books, forest of textual guidance of our Maharshis, of great yogis, siddhas, etc. And most important among them is, of course, the Vedas, and then comes the Smritis, and then comes the Itihasa Puranas, and then the Agama, Tantras, and so on and so forth. So, how can we ignore this? The second element, the element which have been given to us by great rishis, the Arshaya Grantha, which are Smritis. So I find it mind-boggling that we ignore it. But even from a very transactional perspective, contemporary perspective also, today the reason we are trying to bring work for IKS, trying to create IKS as a mainstream approach, is to create our own drishti, create our own narrative, our own worldview. So if we want to create our own worldview, if we want to create our own narrative on all issues, so when we say we want to create a grand narrative or our drishti, it is not on one issue or other issue, but we want to do that on all issues. So then how can we have our own narrative, our own vision, our own drishti on socio-cultural, civilizational issues, on religious issues, when you are ignoring that one genre of tradition, one genre of textual tradition, whose very purpose is to shed light on socio-cultural, spiritual, religious, and civilizational issues, namely the Dharmashâstra tradition. Because Dharma has a direct bearing on all these things. So it is this I find it very mind-boggling and very unfortunate also, because and it is unfortunate that a very important text of Dharmashâstra tradition such as Manusmriti has been completely politicized, completely made controversial, and any mention of the Manusmriti leads to a very extreme emotional outbursts, a burning of the text, etc., making it almost impossible for a philosophical engagement with the text, for an academic engagement with the text. So, through one of the purposes of writing this book was to counter this, in the sense that was to provide a gateway to engage with the text in a holistic way, in a more honest way, in a way which the text is supposed to be engaged with. So not with biases, not with political agendas, but as what the text expects us to engage it with. So the reason I came to this conclusion, and why I took up this text, it is in a sense, it is funny or interesting. You could say that 15 years ago, I myself was not aware that there is a text called Manusmriti. So or there are a lot of smritis and all. I may have been read about them a bit here and there, but it never took root in the mind. So as with most Hindus, we are all more familiar with Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, etc. And a little bit, if you go deeper, you're today, thanks to all the Vedanta acharyas, you are more familiar with that there are Upanishads and other texts by great acharyas such as Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, etc. But when I was working on my book, Menstruation Across Cultures, historical perspective, which was written in the context of Shabarimala issue that happened. So this was back in 2015. One of the arguments in the mainstream was not just the fact that the narrative was that the temple practice, the temple exclusion of women of the fertile age, from menarche to menopause, women of that age are excluded from that one particular temple in Shabarimala. And the narrative was that not only that this exclusion was because the Hinduism or Hindu Dharma as a whole is anti-women. It looks down upon women, and in that context, a underlying discourse was made that it is because of menstruation that women are looked down upon. So I wanted to study purely out of curiosity, purely out of the feeling of Jnanarjana, seeking the truth, that what is really the truth. Is it really so that the Hindu tradition, the Hindu Dharma, our acharyas, our traditions, our practices, do they really look down upon women? Because in my everyday experiences of life around me, in my family and others, I have never experienced or noticed this, that women are looked down upon in a ritualistic or a religious sense. So I have never experienced this. So it was out of this seeking what is the truth. I began to find resources, primary resources to study on what is the Hindu view on menstruation. So my original articles that I wrote in India Facts were titled Hindu Views on Menstruation. So here, the important idea is Hindu views. When we say what is the Hindu view or what is the Hindu religious view or dharmic view, then it is not just what people believe, but we have to have a more surer basis. That surer basis is the Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, that is the Bharatiya Shastra Parampara, right? So then I was wondering, where is this subject matter discussed? And I realized that there are two branches or two Vidyasthanas which deal with this. One is the Ayurveda, the other is Dharmashâstra. So it is in the Dharma Sutra texts such as, the Bodhyana Dharma Sutra, Gautama Dharma Sutra, in Smriti texts such as Manusmriti or many other Smritis, as well as in the certain, even in the Veda, we find in the core Veda Samhitas, we find references to Rajo Dharma, Rajaswala Dharma, and again in the Ayurvedic text. So it was then that I realized that, look, this is such a very important issue about what is technically in the tradition called as achara, that is our day-to-day conduct. So this day-to-day conduct is also a very important part of our social life, our cultural life, our religious life. And all these are actually discussed in a genre of text called as Smritis. So this was, and after this book on menstruation, I continued my research into many other slightly controversial issues, you could say, such as, menstruation was also a controversial issue. Similarly, abortion and adultery and many other controversial issues. See, all these issues I have bearing today, here and now. Every other day, I'm sure the court hears some or the other cases related to divorce due to adultery, or the abortion is a big issue. Even recently we had this a discussion about age of marriage, whether we should divorce the age of marriage and age of consent for sexual intimacy. So we have all these discussions happening every day, and unfortunately most of the narratives, the discourse, the viewpoints, the policymakers discussion, all this happen on the basis of the Western understanding of these issues. So we have no Indic drishti on them. And when I wanted to study to develop at least a kind of a draft on these from a Indian perspective, from a Hindu perspective, again, the only genre of text that is actually discussing this in great detail is Dharmashâstra. We have certain things mentioned in the Kamashastra also, but there the perspective is a bit different. So we have to take just like in this case of menstruation, Ayurveda and Dharmashastra have to be seen in a more comprehensive manner as it together, in a holistic manner. Similarly, on these issues also different shastras has been seen. But the most important aspect also, it is the Dharmashastra text that gave great insights or frameworks to understand these issues. So then I realized we are kind of a blind, leading the blind, both will fall in the ditch kind of thing, wherein we are completely ignoring our Shastra Parampara, our Jnana Parampara, because of the colonialism and subsequent politicization of and various issues. So I want to go into the political aspect of it because that is not my interest. But the point I'm trying to make is, irrespective of whatever the political happenings in the past, correct, wrong, or whatever it is unwise of us today to ignore a genre of text which has so much to offer to resolve our contemporary contradictions, to help us develop a drishti to understand the world today, to resolve the issues arising out today, here and now. So with this in mind, then I began to study Manusmriti a little by little. I've been studying it for a decade now, and I realized that again, when you start studying the Manusmriti, the most of the at least in English language, whatever material is there, the Indological material, the scholarly material, they all share the same issue, that they uh, they analyze the text. They tell us many things about the Dharmashâstra tradition or Dharmashâstra text, but they don't tell us much about Dharma itself, in the sense that they 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 uh, they use a particular framework, the historicist perspective or an Indological perspective, to analyze the text, which essentially makes this text as uh, artifacts of the past, museum pieces, a dead text, which has the only relevance of which today is as a text of historical documentation, to say, oh, this text was formed in 2nd century BCE or the 2nd century CE. During the Guptas added this and somebody added that. So society in the past was good and then it became bad. See, these are all Indological arguments. But we are learning nothing for us today that can be helpful to us today. So only there is information, true or false. It could be true, it could be mostly they are all speculations. That is how I have understood. But the point is, it is not helpful to us today. And what I discovered is the texts themselves never intended it to be used in the way that it is being used by the contemporary historicist and Indological approach. The text does not consider itself to a text of artifact of a past. Rather, it is teaching about Dharma. Dharmashâstra. Shastra is any, to put it in a very simple language, Shastra is ordering of knowledge in a particular field of knowledge, and then expressing them, communicating them in a systematic manner. So it is a technical work. It is a technical textbook, so to speak, because Shastra is that which reveals that knowledge. And here in Dharmashâstra, the Smritis, the Manu, Yagyavalkya, Parashara, Narada, etc., these are Dharmashastras because the topic that is being taught to us is Dharma. And what is Dharma? Dharma, we have a particular definition. Today, people add the word Dharma to anything and everything and think that everything becomes Dharma. But Dharma is a Shastriya topic. Again, it is a category created by the Shastras. So it has a definition in the Shastra. It is not a Laukika Shabda. People use it in a Laukika way, that is fine. But when we are discussing a technical matter, we have to have the technical understanding. So one of the definition of the Dharma is that it can lead to Abhyudaya and Nishresa. So happiness in this world, happiness in the moksha, the ultimate happiness. So happiness in the world, this world, iha, and after the death in the swarga, and then to lead towards moksha. Any action that can give us all these results, karma phala, only that action can be called as dharma. So this is the technical definition. So by definition then, dharma is that which can lead to happiness, overall well-being. Well-being here, well-being after the death by attaining swarga, etc., and then ultimate well-being in the form of liberation, emancipation, or enlightenment, that is moksha. Now, is happiness today irrelevant? Don't we need to be happy? Don't we want well-being? Don't we want to be happy in our immediate life? Don't we want to attain happiness even after the death of this body? Don't we want to attain the highest happiness in the form of moksha? Nobody can say that I don't want to be happy. So that means the subject matter which deals with happiness is relevant to us today. So dharma becomes relevant to us today as it was 2000 years ago, and it will continue to be relevant 2000 years from now or 20,000 years from now. So this is the perspective that is missing from contemporary discourse. And I have tried to bring out this in my book. So my book, Manusmriti, has 2,650 plus verses. My book only deals with the opening 4 verses. You might say, why should I read this book? Because by reading this book, you will get your fundamentals right. Fundamentals ठीक हो जाएगा. Fundamentals, once it is right, then you will be in a better position to understand the rest of the text. The fundamental questions such as what the text is about, what is the subject matter, what is the purpose or utility of studying it, how to study it, who should study it. So all these are very fundamental questions. Whether this book is a law book or whether it is a biblical religious book in a biblical sense, wherein hegemonically imposed, or what is the function of this text, or and when I say Manusmriti, though it is about book is about Manusmriti, it is applicable to all the Dharmashâstra tradition, all the Smritis, the core texts of Dharmashâstra tradition. So I hope it's kind of a gateway to understand Dharma, understand Dharmashastras, understand the larger landscape of Bharatiya Jnana Parampara itself. I hope more and more people will engage with it.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think it's very important that you have defined dharma itself, because even people like us who do a little bit of study still find it difficult to actually understand the realm of dharma and what dharma actually means. So you had given me, or to the audience who are listening to this, the right definition of dharma. So before we go deeper into the concepts of this book itself, the first part of the book actually delves deeper into the Dharmashastras. Okay, and the later part actually talks about and does the have the commentary on the 4 verses. So my question is that why you had discussed Dharmashastras in detail before before the book goes on to talk about the Manusmriti itself. So why Dharmashastras are very important to actually understand Manusmriti in the first place.
Yes. So while it was a conscious choice that I took to uh, write this book in the form of a commentary. So commentary is a traditional method, the Bhashya, the Tika, etc. The format I have followed is very closer to the Bhashya, wherein each word of a verse, the shloka, has been explained. So while it was a conscious choice to do this as a commentary, because then, and it is only then, that the true import, the true understanding, the deeper layers and reflections on each part of the verse can be brought out. So it is, to count it is only 4 verses, made up of, say, each verse containing some 10 words, so 40 words, right? So it is, to translate it as a simple translation, it is very easy. It will take half a page, not even a full page. And many people who have read through the Manusmriti, they have just read through it. But those 4 verses, each word, each pada there has very deep meanings. So I wanted to bring out all of them so as to help readers to understand what the text itself is telling about itself. So the Anubandha Chatusha, the fourfold relations about what is the subject matter of the text, what is the fruit of understanding, what is the final result. So all these things are dealt with there. So I wanted to bring it out in its own voice, in its own language, and shed light on the multiple dimensions and the beauty and the deep meaning embedded. But however, it is also important that uh, before we can understand the depth of the water, the beauty of the water, it is important to remove the non-essential things that float on the water. Sometimes some plastic is floating on the water, the garbage is floating on the water, and such things. You have to remove them first. So we have this 250 years of contemporary scholarship, the Indological scholarship, and the reformist scholarships, which have created so much narrative, so much discourses, so much doubts, so much different types of arguments, that all of them prevent us to access the text on its own basis. So this was one of the reasons why I wrote the introductory chapters. So those introductory chapters were written actually at different points of time, and some of them were also published independently also before the book came. But the reason to include them in the book was that so that people, it is the book is not just a reflection or musings on the four verses, but also to show that we are aware of the challenges in front of us. So the very common questions when it comes to Manusmriti is that people will say that it was composed during Shunga period or Gupta period, and before that Manusmriti was not there. So it is a very later text, so we should not, it has no relevance to us. So another, similarly, the another idea is that, as I mentioned, it is an artifact of the past, it is a musing piece, it has no relevance today. So I deal with these questions in the introductory chapters. So the first chapter deals with the question. Many also believe that Manusmriti has a lot of interpolations. Uh, Wendy Doniger at one place says that it is it's a patchwork, done from taking from many other places, floating verses, this and that, and somebody did a patchwork. So these are some of the things that that are there among scholarly, among non-scholarly people. So the very first chapter in the introduction basically tries to understand the origination of the textual tradition and its transmission and its composition. So it is very important to understand that our approach to Shastra is not, in the West, it is all about, say, for example, in the philosophy, we have great philosophers in the West like Kant, like Descartes, and many others. So we speak of them and we speak of their works, right? The work that they actually composed, wrote, etc., etc. But that approach cannot be taken to understand our Shastriya tradition, because our Shastra is not a text of the past. It is a Shastra tradition which is living here today with us. So what does that mean is that the Manusmriti today, that the text we have today, the manuscripts could only go back to maybe 400, 500 years, because the manuscripts keep getting eroded. So new copies are made. So copies of manuscripts may be few centuries old. And the way the Vendologists have dated the extant text goes to 2nd century BCE to 2nd century BCE, that may be true. But that truth is only about the extant text of that Manusmriti. It is not about the Manu Dharmashâstra tradition itself, the transmission itself, because we have evidence within the Manusmriti text as well as in Mahabharata and other texts such as Narada Smriti, that the original text of Manusmriti, the Manu Dharmashâstra, was composed by Swayambhava Manu, which is very, very old. Swayambhava Manu was the Manu of the first Manvantara. I won't get into the dating debate, because again it is all speculative. It is a defeating debate and which has no bearing. It is enough to understand that that original text was a very huge text with millions of verses, etc. And the tradition has recorded this transmission that in through different rishis. Manusmriti itself says that originally Swayambhava Manu taught Bhrigu and 9 other rishis, 8 or 9 other rishis. So there were 9 different lines or schools of transmission that happened. And today, the transmission, what is called as Manusmriti, that is there, is the text that survived in the transmission of the Bhrigu school of transmission. Some of the manuscripts mention this Bhrigu Prokta specifically. And the text itself retains this memory in the first chapter, wherein when the group, it puts a narrative story there in the 4 verses. The group of sages come to Swayambhava Manu, request them for instruction on Dharma. Then he gives a very summarized version and then tells, I have taught everything to my Bhrigu and other students. Here is Bhrigu. He will tell you the rest. So rest of the text is put in through the mouth of the Bhrigu. So this is a memory cultural memory, the textual transmission, memory of the transmission that has been retained in the extant text, that it is transmitted in the school of Bhrigu. So that means, that is why in the Vedic text also you find mantras saying whatever Manu says is like a medicine. It may taste bitter, but it is very much needed to. So what this means is that you cannot simply say that Manu Smriti is 2nd century CE or say, written in Shunga period and full stop. No, this text, the extant text may be put in there, but it is based on the Shastra, the knowledge, the Shastra knowledge that has been carefully transmitted for many, many centuries. We don't know till since when. So, and we have corroborating evidence, not just within Manu, but in Mahabharata, etc. also to this. And this is how the Shastra tradition, not just in Dharmashâstra, in the Kama Shastra also, in the Vedanta also, you see it is not never about a single person. It is always about the Shastra as a whole, the Shastra tradition as a whole. There is a core, there is first, for example, in the Vedanta, you have many Upanishads, 10 principal Upanishads, hundreds of other Upanishads. Then Badarayana condensed that knowledge in the Brahma Sutra. Then Shankaracharya wrote a long commentary on that sutra. On Shankaracharya's commentary, we have Bhamati, very long sub-commentary by Vachaspati. So Upanishad was huge. Then it was condensed. And then through commentaries, it was again enlarged, like an hourglass format. Similar thing has happened in the Kama Shastra, in the Dharmashâstra. So that is why we are a living tradition. Manusmriti is not a dead text. It is a living text, that is by which I mean it is relevant to us here and now. By this, I do not mean that every letter, every verse, everything has to be implemented in tutu or have to be understood in tutu. It is not so. That is not the nature of the text itself. The text itself, the Dharmashâstra itself, clearly tells us that our acharyas, the commentators and everybody has told us there are different types of vakyas in the Dharmashastras. Some are related to Adrishtaphala, the invisible results such as Swarga, etc., which are eternally relevant, which are eternally valid. I mentioned, right? Happiness, Sukha, Swarga, Moksha, they are always there. But there are also Drishtarthas. For example, in legal jurisprudence, the Vyavahara portion, it is mostly, it has a karmic basis at the core, but in function, in form, it is informed by the material truths on the ground, right? So it is whatever instructions in the Vyavahara that is found in Smritis, it can be taken as an indication, as a guideline, which has to be contextualized to contemporary situations. So it is not that we blindly, people say that, oh, you speak about Manusmriti, so that means you want to implement everything, every verse, everything in as it is. It was never implemented like that. So one of the arguments that I make in the book is the Manusmriti or any Smriti, by definition, they are a Pramana Shastra. Their function is merely to reveal knowledge. It is like a textbook. And their function ends after that. It is not in their nature, by definition, it is not supposed to be hegemonically implemented by a state or by a church-like entity, religious structure. We have zero evidence in the past of having that. This does not mean the Smritis are not influential. Manusmriti was never relevant, as many people argue, because we have inscriptions of kings being praised as following the teachings of Manu. The judges, the committee of judges, etc., who did the resolve the issues, disputes, etc., they were all experts in Dharmashastra. So it is not that they took one text and implemented as a constitution today. There was no notion of positive law, but there was two elements that dictated that how the law was implemented. One is the law were created by the kings and the group of the legal experts. The basis was, one was a Shastriya basis, which provided the broader view, broader principles. The second was the issues on the ground, the interrelationships between communities, the kind of disputes on the ground. So all of them, the Lokachara also played. So that is why we had a very robust system, very diverse system, and this diversity was promoted by the Dharmashastra view itself. So this diversity was not an accident. It was not that in spite of the hegemony there was diversity. No, the diversity was promoted by the Shastriya worldview itself. So these are many questions that I kind of clarify in the book by showing that how the purpose of the Smritis is as to act as a Pramana Shastra. So tell us about karma phala relationship. So the text is not the only sense the text can be understood as binding is in the sense that the karma and karma phala, the action and the fruit of action, has an eternal relationship between them. You perform a particular action, then you have to get the consequence of that action. So the world functions in that. So the text is only revealing that knowledge, revealing this connection, which we cannot know from any other source. Right? What if you perform a particular yajna, it can lead to Swarga. There is no other way of knowing them. You cannot see it with the eyes. You cannot simply logically bring it out. Only the Shabda Pramana is the Pramana for that. So it is revealing that knowledge to us. So if we approach the text in this way, not in a rigid manner, not in a biased manner, then we will see there is a lot of material, lot of insights on that, not only on legal aspects, not only on ritualistic aspects. See, ritualistic perspective is the most important perspective for Dharmashastra, because Dharma is a yajna. Dharma itself, performance of Dharma itself is a kind of yajna. Any Dharma you do, it is kind of a yajna. It is a ritual action. That is why that ritual action can take you to Swarga and Moksha. However, there is not just these ritualistic perspectives, but there are a lot of insights on our everyday, day-to-day life. How we can make it more meaningful, more elevating, how to lead a ethical life, how to lead a happy life, how to lead a more enlightened life. So there are so many things in the Manusmriti, but also in the other Dharmashastra texts also. There is so much material. It is, I feel it very unfortunate that we are not engaging with this genre of text.
Uh, Thank you. I think you have explained it in a very effective way. That because it's a long thing, because the texts itself are very significant, and it requires a certain kind of framework understanding to actually engage with it. You just can't read one line and engage with it. So it requires prior training and prior mindsets in terms of unbiased thing to engage with the text. So we have a request from our subscriber. So he requests, is if possible, would like if Nitin ji briefly talk about the idea of adhikar and how to approach or think of Smriti Shastras like Manusmriti for a layman, if it possible for you.
Okay. Yes, yes. This is a very important question, very wonderful question. I'm glad the viewers asked this. Uh, I think this adhikara, the category, the frame, the word, has been most misunderstood, misused in contemporary discourses everywhere, which is unfortunate. So, in Samskrita, especially in the context of the Shastras and traditional practices, adhikara means, it does not mean power, it does not mean right, etc. But rather, adhikara means eligibility. Adhikara means to say that somebody has adhikara to study something or to perform something. It simply means two things. One, that such a person is endowed with the criterias, endowed with the qualities, the competencies that are needed to do that study. For example, if you want to study medicine, you have to pass the MBBS exam. So this is a very simple Laukika example. You cannot directly enroll for MBBS after finishing your 12th standard. Sorry, after finishing your 10th standard, right? Or you cannot directly enroll to PhD right after your 12th standard. You have to first finish your bachelor's, then master's, and then PhD, right? So adhikara simply means, and this eligibility criteria would be different for different contexts. So just in Laukika world, the adhikara for entering armed forces is different from entering engineering, right? This is, and similarly, it is will be different in different contexts. So the one aspect of adhikara is that whether one possesses those qualities, those competencies, those temperament, there are many things, those ritual aspects, those ritual competencies there when it comes to ritual, etc. Second is, when it is said that somebody is eligible or somebody has the adhikara to pursue a course of action, it means that that person, by pursuing that course of action, will get the full fruit of that action. Is able to get the full fruit of action as long as he performs it properly. So when, for example, take for example the very controversial thing that about the Veda Adhikara, that only some people can study Veda, not study Veda, and such things, right? Here, the question is not about whether one can read the text of Veda. Well, now today we have rigveda.pdf in all languages. Anybody can read it. It is also not about discussing the content of the Vedas or whatever it is there in any secular forums or any other forums. Like we have so much discussions, all these Indologists, all these chronologists, they have, geography of Veda, history of Veda, chronology of Veda, all do that. It is not speaking about any of them. But when the prohibition is about Veda Adhyayana, that is a particular format of study wherein you go to a guru, stay with the guru, Gurukula Vasa, and then there are certain tapas that you have to do in the Brahmacharya Avastha and then study in a particular way. And that study, there are certain requirements because that study is a ritual performance. That study itself is a ritual. That study itself is a dharma. Therefore, it requires, and that form of study also, it not only gives you knowledge, etc., but it also gives you punya, karmic merit, because it's a dharmika yajna. It is a ritual act. So this Shastriya Adhyayana versus simple secular study is a difference again, which I have dealt in great detail in the book. Now coming to the text such as Smritis, etc., we have to understand why we need to study Smriti. It is for understanding what is our dharma. So there are many different texts to understand and many different ways to understand. So my book on Manusmriti is also one way to have some understanding on the issue. And there are no restriction on reading this book or discussing this book, right? But in a Shastriya Adhyayana format, there are certain Smritis wherein some restrictions are there on who can study it in a Shastriya format, go to a guru, stay with the guru, follow the tapas and all those things. But there are other texts which do not have such restrictions. And there are certain texts which say that only these people can do it. Because when they are speaking that, it is from a ritualistic purpose, from a ritualistic aspect. Similarly, we have this notion of adhikara when we perform rituals. So another very common is that omkara. Who can chant om, whom should not chant om when you are chanting mantra. So in the Vaidika Paddhatis, women should not chant om. There are certain tantra paddhatis where this is allowed. That is a very different matter because that is a different paddhati itself. But in the Vaidika paddhati, there is a prohibition on women chanting Vaidika mantras and adding om to before the mantras. But here again, people should not think in terms of rights and wrongs or equality, because this is not the action itself is not a secular activity. What is the purpose of an action? It is to attain that benefit, that result of that action, the fruit. So when it is said that this action should not be done by some people, it simply means that even if they do it, they will not get the result. The Shastra says that dharma, moksha, etc., all are them, all are for everybody. There is no exclusion as far as the highest goals are concerned. The phala is concerned. There is no text, no acharya who says that no, only this person can attain moksha, that person cannot attain moksha, or only this person can perform dharma, that person cannot. It is not that. The method of performance could be different based on our own temperaments, our own ritual competency, our own karmic baggage, where we stand in our long journey through many lives in this towards moksha. And we have Shankaracharya himself, Adi Shankaracharya Bhagavad in the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, and cites this. There is a discussion about if ashrama dharma, that is the brahmacharya, grihastha, etc., if it is so necessary to pursue moksha, because practicing ashrama dharma gives purification of the mind, which helps to pursue moksha. If this is so, that does it mean those who are outside of ashrama dharma cannot pursue moksha? That is the question. Badarayana and Shankaracharya both say that no, Shastra gives special methods for those who are outside of ashrama dharma to pursue moksha. And he quotes Manusmriti. Bhagavad Padacharya quotes Manusmriti there. So the point here is, we are a forest of Shastra tradition which has hundreds of methods to attain Abhyudaya Nishreyasa, attain overall well-being, material well-being, spiritual well-being. The reason we have so many methods is that no two-person is same. I am not I may have inherited many traits from my parents, but I am not exactly same as my mother or father, or as exactly same as my wife or daughter, exactly same as my friends. No two-person is same. We all, when we come to this janma, we come alone. When we leave this body, we go alone. Only thing that is with us all the time is our dharma and adharma. The dharma that we committed, the punya will be there. The adharma we committed, the papa will also be there. So with this very deep perspective, the adhikara, the notion has come. So we don't, it is very wrong to approach adhikara in a negative sense. Adhikara simply means eligibility, whether one fulfills the criteria of eligibility. And why it is important? Because if one does not fulfill it, then that particular course of action will not give the result. It is as simple as that. Or in some cases, such as some sadhanas that the people do, it may give you some negative results that you might not have anticipated. So to prevent all those things, there are rules of do's and don'ts. If you do the do's, the vidhi, then it will give you best result. If you do the don'ts, then it will give you the worst results. Do good, avoid bad. It is a very simple thing that we follow in our day-to-day life, right? I'm not able to hear you. I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, yeah. Actually, I wanted to just give one more little bit of small example. Actually, like reinforce what Shridaji is mentioning and saying. Is that correct? Today, I can actually download all the books on quantum mechanics and read that book on all the books on quantum mechanics. It doesn't make that I become a quantum physicist. For that, I need to go to university, study as per their frameworks, pass the exam, and then the same people might be reading the same books, but they are studying in a university. I am studying on my own. I might possess the knowledge, but not the way it is required to be called a physicist or a quantum physicist. So I think that also makes it clear that today I might have access to Vedas and read the Vedas, but to comprehend the Vedas, I need to go to a Gurukula to actually get the knowledge, the wisdom, not only the information.
True, true.
Yeah. So Nitinji, we also have our channel members, okay, who had requested actually us to like whether they can ask questions to you. So is it like with your permission? I would
Yes, yes.
like.
Please go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
So the person will be actually joining us. We are the channel members, paid members. So we have
Okay.
with us Nocturnal Patriot. Namaste.
Namaste.
Uh, Namaste. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. So
Okay.
if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask.
Yes. So my question is, what exactly is the status of Puranas in our system currently? So, because people tend to attribute low importance to the Puranas, because since Puranas happen to be, like, according to many, each Purana happens to have a sectarian perspective to provide. So people tend to be very dismissive of Puranas nowadays, to the extent that they even negate its importance. So my question is, what would the importance be that they should be provided in this current because we know that the Mahabharata and the Ramayana are itihasas. They have their place in the system. Where do the Puranas come?
Okay. Wonderful question. So again, I think a lot of bad publicity to Puranas have happened in the last 200 to 50 years by various organizations for various reasons. But without going into all those things, but essentially, Puranas are an extension of the Vaidika Sampradaya itself. So if I have to tabulate the uh, Dharma Pramanas, that is the sources, the textual sources, the Shastriya sources, which teach about Dharma and Moksha, we start with Veda itself, the Shruti itself, the Samhita, the Brahmana, the Aranyaka, and the Upanishads. So they teach essentially if we can condense the entirety of teaching of the Veda into two words, the twofold things that teach is one is Dharma, the other is Moksha. And the same is then taken up in the Smritis, which also teach Dharma primarily, Moksha also, but Dharma primarily. So the Purva Bhaga of the Veda, which teaches Dharma, is further elaborated in the Smriti Shastras, whereas the Uttara Bhaga, the Upanishads, which teach the Moksha, as well as the Purva Bhaga, which teach Dharma in the Shruti Smriti, they are then put together in a wholesome manner in both the Itihasas and the Puranas. So Itihasa and Purana have almost equivalent standing. In fact, many traditional acharyas often subsume Itihasa under Puranas itself. Right? So it is a Vidyasthana also. So there are differences, of course, in the conceptualization, etc., and the narrative format. But essentially, what the Vedas reveal, Vedas are the independent, the uniqueness of the Veda is that it is the only independent source of knowledge. That is, it is a self-valid Swata Pramana. It is a valid on its own. It is self-valid Pramana. It is Apaurusheya Pramana. It has been manifestation of Ishvara. Based on the Veda, the Smritis were composed by the Rishis, and the uniqueness of the Smriti is that it is the most systematic exposition of Dharma. most technical, systematic, wholesome exposition, a scholarly exposition. The uniqueness of Itihasa Puranas, which are also based on Veda, is that it takes the insights from the Veda, the scholarship from the Smritis, the technical understanding from the Smritis, and puts it in a narrative, accessible format. So that is what Valmiki, Maharshi, and Vyasa have done. This is not just about the Itihasa, but also about the Puranas. That it has been formulated in a narrative sense, which is more easier for people to understand, people to relate through stories, through Adbhuta Rasa everywhere, to various rasas. See, the Puranas have the very great feature in that they also record the genealogies, they also record the sacred history that is happening in a different plane, such as about the Devatas, the Gandharvas, etc. There is no way for us to know all these things if it was not for the being mentioned in the Puranas. And then they teach Dharma and Moksha. So as far as teaching Dharma and Moksha is concerned, they are as important as the Itihasas or Smritis or Vedas, etc. And even more, the Puranas, especially because different Puranas are focused on different Devatas as the Supreme Bhagavan, the Upasana methods of that Devata have been given there. Various Vratas have been given there. Various mantras have been given there. Various stotras have been given there. Sahasranamas are given there. Where would we be if we don't have all these things? So, being a sectarian, as you say, that different, there are Shaiva Puranas, Vaishnava Puranas, etc., is not a deficiency. It is its strength. Because Brahman is saying, there is only what the Upanishads call as Brahman can also be known by various names as Shiva, Bhairava, Shakti, Durga, Kali, Ganesha, Vishnu, Narayana. See, it doesn't matter how different sampradayas, darshanas interpret it. So, Advaitins because being an Advaitin, being in the Shankaracharya Sampradaya, I have particular view, fine. Other may not agree with it fully. But everybody has to agree with this simple aspect that being sectarian is not a deficiency, it is its greatest strength, because it is able to cater to all of us, crores of Hindus that are today, because what is at the heart of Sanatana Dharma? It is Devata, it is Bhagwan, it is our gods. It is the Devata, it is the Dharma, it is the Desha. These are all at very core of Sanatana Dharma. So these Devatas,
that kind of addresses my question. I also had one thing to add, and also there is the fact, I think, because as you said, came up, some Upapuranas and some Sthala Puranas even give us information about localities. So uniqueness of localities, that also comes up through our Puranas, if I'm not mistaken. You can maybe.
Yes, definitely. And when I speak of Puranas, I mean all of them, both the 18 or 19 Mahapuranas and the 18 Upapuranas. So this Maha Upa, we should not be misled by that. It simply means which is, kind of major and which is kind of ancillary. It doesn't matter. See, there are two beautiful Upapuranas called Mudgala Purana and Ganesha Purana. But for the Ganapatyas, for those who worship Ganapati, for those, even all common of us, everybody nowadays does Ganapati worship. We go to Ganapati temple and all. So if we want to know who our Bhagwan Ganapati is, then we have to study that Puranas. How will you know who Ganapati is? So Puranas are those texts where Bhagwan has manifested his Leela, or the Puranas are those texts which have captured the Leela of Bhagavan. captured the Bhagavan himself. You can directly, when you read the Krishna Leela in Bhagavata Purana, you're directly accessing Bhagavan there. So let us not think of Puranas as being inferior. In some sense, Puranas are the greatest texts, you can say, because they give us direct hotline to our Bhagavan, our Devatas. Direct hotline. You just read Krishna Leela in Bhagavatam or Devi Leela in Devi Bhagavata or Ganesha Leela in Ganesha Purana, close your eyes and meditate upon that form, meditate upon that Leela, then you have a direct connection there. Do you think a dry reading of, say, any text, any other text can give this? It's not possible. So it is very important that all these Arsha Granthas, be it the Vedas, the Smritis, the Itihasa, the Puranas, they have been given to us by our rishis for a particular reason. They all have particular function, and it is almost criminal, as far as I am concerned, to pit one genre of text as being competing against another genre of text, or one being somehow more important than the other. See, importance, less importance, there are certain, when we interpret the text, there are certain hermeneutics principles that we use to arrive at a understanding. That is very different. But we cannot say that this genre of text is inferior. That is very, very wrong. Puranas are a very, very wonderful texts that gave us direct access to our devatas. Sthala
Yeah,
Purana
so
included.
thank you. So thank you, Nocturnal Patriot.
Thank you
I
so
will
much
put you in the
for answers like
backstage. I'll put it in the backstage in case if you have more questions, you can come. We have one more member who has joined us, so I'll add him. So Rishi is with us. Namaste, Rishi.
Namaste, Vimashda. Namaste, Nithinji. Thank you so
Namaste.
much for coming to our channel. And especially for my case, I would say that you have been such a guiding principle in my life, especially in regards to Dharma and many other questions. Have been reading your articles at indiafacts.org, and now even watching some of your discourses on Indic Academy as well. So thank you so much once again. Just wanted to convey you this. So
Thank you for your words.
This was, yes, Nithinji. So this was a question which I had. So recently I've been seeing some apologists, would-be apologists from Hindu side, always trying to say this, that, oh, Hinduism is so not book-based religion, unlike the other religions, so-called monotheistic religions. This disdain for Shastra, how should we, as laymen, try to convince at least ourselves, that Shastras are actually one of the most important bulwarks as far as Hinduism is concerned, and we should not be shying away from it. So how should we do that? Just wanted your guidance on it.
Okay, very, very wonderful question. We are, as I said earlier, we are not a single book dharma, but rather a library of books, a forest of books. See, the problem here is there has been a movement in the sense that a significant section of Hindus kind of who have been awakened to the dangers faced by the Hindu civilization have been so out-focused looking into the threats, especially from the Abrahamic side, that they have forgotten that we cannot define ourselves, our identity, our religions, our understanding, our life in a negative way. That is, we cannot say a Hindu is one who is not Abrahamic, or a Hindu religion is this which is not Abrahamic. So our tenet is not this which is not Abrahamic. That is, unfortunately, a lot of people have this understanding that any idea that is there in Abrahamic religions, any idea which is even remotely appears to be similar to them, then we should drop that idea. We should consider that that idea does not belong to Hindus. So this is also one such, because the Abrahamics have this Bible and such things, so then we cannot have our Shastra as a pramana. So they think that being Hindu then means we have to consider our all our Shastras as perhaps fiction books to throw away. I think that is what they think. So it is very important that we recognize that the importance of the Shastra, and the first step towards is to first understand what is the actual function of the Shastra in our worldview. So the second chapter in my book is the place and function of Dharmashâstra in Hindu worldview. So wherein I have a section in that chapter on the Hindu epistemology, the pramanas, pratyaksha, anumana, etc., wherein I show how in the Hindu worldview, Shabda is an independent pramana, and there are certain knowledge that can only be got from Shabda pramana. And there is no other way to know this than this. So if somebody says that we are not a book-based religion and we don't need any text, we don't need anything, we are as it is, then we should ask, what is the source of their worldview? Often you would find that source of their worldview is again books, but not coming from our tradition, but coming from outside. That people read all these for very contemporary authors, right? Very famous authors from across the world, and many people read books on self-improvement, books on philosophy, books on spirituality, and so many things. Books are available, and we like it or not, we consciously or subconsciously imbibe those knowledge and make it our own. So nobody is there who can say that all my knowledge is completely my own. Right? Now, if you ask them, then you will see that we can trace that knowledge there. So their view is not a Hindu view. So they cannot say that this is a Hindu view, because the origins of those ideas are not Hindu. So it is we have to convince them to self-introspect on their own assumptions. And for our own self, it is important to understand the actual place and function of the Shastra, the relevance, be convinced on what they offer to us, and by leading a life in accordance to them to whatever extent possible. So that is the best way out. So because if we say that we are a Hindu, then that term has to mean something. You cannot be an atheist, or at least you cannot be a Charvaka or a materialist, or somebody who denies the Veda, who denies the Shastra, who denies Dharma, who denies Moksha, who denies our Devatas, and then still say I am a Hindu. That makes no sense. If we are calling Hindu, then that Hindu must have some meaning. And Hindu is a religious identity, then it has to have a religious meaning, a dharmika meaning. So our own term is we are a Sanatana Dharmi. So what is the Sanatana Dharma? So we have to have Sanatana eternal principles. We have to subscribe to those principles, and we have to subscribe to the Dharma. So ethically, theologically, we should base ourselves in our Hindu worldview, in our Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, in our Shastriya Parampara. Only then we can say that we are Hindu. Otherwise, it is simply a namesake thing. Just like how many people only remember their Hindu when filling the forms, and put that name, unfortunately, with great discomfort, right? So, but if we are thinking people, then we have to self-introspect on what this being Hindu means. That is why I often distinguish between Hindu and a practicing Hindu. So practicing Hindu is a aware Hindu who knows what that Hindu implies. I hope this answers your question.
Yes, Rishi.
Absolutely, Nithinji. Yes,
Nithinji,
yes.
I might add one more category which is defined by great Mr. J. Sai Deepak as the Hindus in name only. So, in the third category that we need to add.
Yes. Yeah, in name only.
So,
So,
people who have
there
a
are also
discomfort
those
being.
who.
Yeah, please go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so like people who have discomfort being identified themselves as Hindu, and people who are just by name Hindu but do not have any meaningful relationship to their identity as Hindu, and also people who are atheist by nature. So there can be multiple definitions.
Atheist, Nastika, etc. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, but even that is not doesn't translate into quite in a very meaningful way. The Nastika traditions and the atheist traditions are quite different in terms of the way we see from our framework. It's also a kind of misnomer. Yeah, Rishi, do you have
Exactly.
any more
So you
questions
cannot.
you want to ask? Yes, sir. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. Maybe Nithinji wanted to say something. Yeah,
No, please
Nithinji.
go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So this is another question. I think we are discussing Manusmriti. So if we do not touch it, then it won't be interesting. Uh, Nitinji, what is Varna? Like really, nobody defines it. I have never seen someone actually define this word, like except you. I have never seen anyone in any public discourse defining it. It's either termed as occupation or something else, qualities even. But what it is, I wanted to know that from you.
Okay. A controversial question, but anyways, I have written one whole chapter in the book on the Varna. I hope you have read it, or at least do read it later. It is in the appendix 1 of the book, Varna, a multidimensional perspective. So this is a very difficult topic to discuss because I was just making. I just made a social media post before joining here, a few minutes before joining here, wherein I mentioned that Hindus in general have forgotten what leading a ritual-centered life is. So we have become a completely de-ritualized society at large. So we don't know what it is to lead a ritualistic life in a day-to-day sense, beyond all the big ceremonies such as marriages or big celebrations such as festivals, etc. So for such a society, it is very difficult to explain what Varna is. And uh, the fact is, uh, the discourse, the contemporary discourse on Varna has been too focused on very uh, a secular format of discussion, of definition, based on a single verse of Bhagavad Gita, which speaks about Varna and as a Gunakarma Vibhaga, which has been interpreted in a very reductive way to has been reduced to either Varna as a categorization of merely a categorization of psychological traits, that is guna, or as a division or categorization of profession, karma. Now, I'm not saying that these guna and karma are not important. They are. But the term guna and karma also have very deeper meaning than simply a psychological trait and a profession. And the correct way to, and the holistic way, sincere way to understand what Varna is not to look into only single text, a single verse and a single text, but rather to examine across different textual genres, different textual pramanas and come up with a comprehensive understanding. And that is what I have done in my book. And what I realized, if I have to put the definition in a single or two sentences, is that Varna is essentially a ritual state. Or you could also say that just like we have a physical body, we have a ritual body. And Varna is a reference to that. In the Vedas itself, not in the Smritis, etc., in the Vedas itself, it is mentioned, it elaborates on what Varna is, how Varna is reference to a particular different types of devatas who come to inhabit us. Based on the nature of the devata, different varnas are defined. So what it means is that varna refers to the presence or absence of particular essence of a particular devata, which in turn determines what kind of ritual lifestyle, ritual course of action is most suitable to a person, which can lead that person, which can make that essence manifest in one's life, first. Second, which will help that person to travel further in the journey, because that manifestation of that particular devata in a person indicates a certain position in one's spiritual journey. And when you do your karma according to that, then it will take you more closer to your moksha. So guna karma is like that. So here again, how the question is, how does one attain this ritual state? It is based on Chandogya Upanishad itself says that if you do your actions, proper actions in this life according to dharma, if you do your actions according to your own dharma, if you do rightful actions in this life, then you attain a particular birth in a particular yoni, particular varna in the next life. That is, you attain a particular varna devata, the varna essence, that devata essence, at the time of birth by inheriting it from your parents, which is determined, whether you do that or not, is determined by your purva janma karma. So here again I have to clarify here, I am not speaking about genetic inheritance in a very gross format, but I am speaking about ritualistic inheritance, which is also transmitted from the parents. This is what guna is. The sattva, rajas, tamas also play a role in this, because only when one has a particular kind of guna that one will be able to retain that ritual state in his life or her life. Because the same Manusmriti and other places also speak about how one could lose these gunas. How one could lose this varna devata, varna essence. So in Smritis often you encounter statements such as, if a Brahmana does not do his Sandhya Vandana thrice a day, or if he does not have Upanayana Samskara, etc., he loses his Varna, he becomes like a Shudra. Here both Brahmana and Shudra is it's a particular reference to the ritual state of a person. That is what is being loosed here. It is not, what is being loosed. If you Sandhya Vandana is a ritual activity, if you don't perform it, you won't become a different community person, right? You won't lose your parents. You will still be the son of that parents. You will still be the brother to your brother. What you lose is that ritual essence, the devata essence. So the karma, Sandhya Vandana, is a karma. And that karma is needed to retain, to make that essence manifest, strengthen that in the world. But everybody does not need it, right? Or the method of Sandhya Vandana could be different. So the idea is that it is to be understood is that essentially speaking, Varna is a ritual designation which speaks something about whether there is a Devata essence, Abhimani Devata in a person or not. Some have certain kind of Abhimani Devata, like Indradi, essence of the Indradi Devata in a Kshatriya, for example. Some do not have any Abhimani Devata. Even that is also fine, because it only indicates the presence as much as the absence. Both of them indicate what is the ritual condition of that person, and based on that, what kind of ritual life is suitable to that person. So it is important to understand that ritual life is not denied for anybody. The pursuit of dharma and moksha is not denied for anybody. Only the method changes. So I hope people are able to appreciate this nuance, that if you essentially, to at the end of the day, neither dharma nor moksha nor artha kama, nothing is denied for anybody. The methods, the whole discourse in the Smriti Shastras on the Varna Shankara and all those things, the purpose is only to determine what is the right spiritual way of life, right ritualistic way of life that is most suitable for a person, that is equipped to take that particular person towards moksha. And this method, this way of life is dharma itself. It is the swadharma. That is why Krishna and Bhagavan Krishna in Gita says, Swadharma nidhanam shreya. Even if you cannot perform your swadharma in the best possible manner, still that is superior to performing somebody else's dharma. Just because you think that somebody else's dharma I can do better job, my own dharma I cannot do best. If you leave your dharma and adopt somebody else's dharma, that will not bring you shreyas, that will not bring you good results, because your dharma is the path that can take you towards moksha, take you towards overall well-being. Even if you perform it badly, as long as you perform it to the best of your ability, it will bear fruit. So when we speak about the professions, so in the Smritis, etc., only certain professions are suggested for certain varnas. So there is no one varna, one profession kind of thing in the Smritis. So we have to distinguish between the jati on the ground, the various, we have hundreds of thousands of jatis, and hereditary transmission of the jobs, etc., in a pre-colonial society. So that is a very different thing. So because hereditary transmission across the world have existed in a pre-industrial era, because that is the most easiest way to transmit the knowledge. And you could keep your specialized knowledge within your kula, so that you have a monopoly over the artha, the livelihood through that method. So that is a very different thing. But for varna, there's for each varna certain kinds of lifestyles. As I mentioned, it's a ritualistic lifestyle. So in that context, the Shastras also mention there are certain types of livelihood which are more conductive to the ritualistic lifestyle, and there are certain livelihood methods which are not conductive to the ritualistic lifestyle of that person. So from that perspective, certain livelihood has been suggested. But this does not mean that the Shastra says that this person has to do this livelihood, otherwise he will be punished. There is no such idea in the Shastra. Instead, what Shastra said, if you cannot do this, if there is some emergency, or if there's living conditions is that you cannot attain your livelihood by this number one choice of livelihood which is most suitable for your ritualistic life, then there is option B, then there is option C, then there is option D. Sometimes it mentions this, sometimes it is understood. So the idea is simply that your profession, if it aligns with your ritualistic life, then it can enhance your ritualistic life. In fact, This idea was so deep that many of these, you see all these weavers and others, for example, farmers, weavers, etc. How do farming happen? The very first thing they do is puja, right? Every season they do puja before in the season when there is harvest. Similarly, everybody worships their equipments. There is Vishwakarma puja that happens. Why are these happening? Because it is sacralization of your professions. And this sacralization is the Dharmashâstra project, that it wants to sacralize the whole life, whole aspects of society. It wants to ritualize the whole society. So only when your profession is not one which induces trauma into you, or when there is rat race, and when there is fear every day that you may be laid off from your work, you cannot make sacralize such work. Today we are in this company, tomorrow you may be, today they say we are all same family, the CEO will come that we are all one family, and tomorrow they will remove you. There cannot be sacralization in such jobs. So one of the reasons why this hereditary transmission of jobs happened was also because that was able to help people to transform their karma into karma yoga. And the vision of the Dharmashâstra is also that even your profession has to be in alignment with your swadharma, with your ritualistic lifestyle that is most beneficial for you. Then the profession also will become karma yoga and will enhance your ritual life. If they are in opposition, then it will not add. There you will always have the dichotomy. Every day is a struggle to choose between dharma and arthakama. We see that in our everyday life today. You have to go to office at 6 in the morning, so you cannot do Sandhya Vandana, or you have to do it very fast in 5 minutes. So this is a very simple example where there is everyday basis, there is struggle, there is conflict. Or if you are into those sampradayas wherein the puja happens in the night, but you are in IT or somewhere where you have to stay back for 11 p.m. or 12 p.m. and you have deadlines from your client, then you cannot do those things. Your Nitya Puja disturbs. See, this is very simple example I'm giving. So we have to have this larger, what I call as, understand the heart of the Manusmriti, understand the heart of the Smriti Shastras, Dharma Shastras. Without this understanding on the heart, if we are only if our only idea is to simply scratch the surface by cherry picking verses from here and there, and my only idea is to see the controversies, create controversies, use the controversial verses, whatever is at the first glance appears problematic. They may be problematic, they may not be problematic. I will not go there. I will say, okay, let us accept that out of 2650 verses, 200 verses are problematic. Let us accept for argument's sake. But my idea, my appeal is that just examine the rest of the 2400 verses, right? If 200 verses are problematic, leave it and let us first understand the rest. Let us first understand the macro picture. And then we can go into micro details. And there is not necessary that we have to accept everything. See, what is the Hindu way? It is that we all use our buddhi. Bhagavan has given us our buddhi, viveka. What we lack today is sincerity. It's all like gata always already full with biases. So if you leave out that, then if you sincerely approach the text, then you will be able to pick up a lot of things that are useful to your own life. Rest of the things you can ignore. You don't need to throw away the entire Shastra into a dustbin or create all the negative or politicize the text. Politicization is the death of any genuine engagement. I hope I was able to answer the question, because I went here and there there in the answer.
No,
No, no,
it's a very
Nitinji, it was
complex topic.
amazing.
So it requires multiple dimensions to actually understand and comprehend so that it makes sense. Because I think you hit upon a very important part, which I actually feel personally myself as well. That for over 1,000 years of our interactions with the Abrahamic thought process, somewhere down the line, we have also become a little bit reductionist in our approach to actually understand complex things. We always want to make a one single statement to explain a very complex thing. Like we know in science, correct, it's an ecosystem where multiple factors come together to give you a result. So it's a system which generates an outcome. So an outcome may be one apple, but to create that one apple, there are hundreds of systemic ways which actually producing one apple. So one apple maybe looks like one, but it is a combination of hundreds and thousands of systems which has worked together to produce that thing. And that we have lost in our 1,000 years of our interactions with the Abrahamics in a way, as a society and as also individuals in so many ways.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. I think the important aspect is that we have faced so many threats continuously. We have been under a colonial rule, so to speak, from last 1,200 years. So, so, so our the kind of the whole thought process have been very much deeply influenced by that. Yes.
Yes, so I have actually, I think we had so many questions that we had discussed when were having the stream, but I think we might have to do one more podcast to actually discuss those questions. Okay. And also, we also have request from our guests to actually bring Nidhin sir again so that we can delve more into these questions which people might have, because it's a ocean that we are trying to like get one or two boons that way. So I would request Nitin ji, so if he can maybe give us a bit more time, maybe coming weeks and months, so we can have one more
Yes, yes,
discussion
definitely.
on the remaining questions. And also,
Yes, yes.
we have one more question which actually we had discussed. So I think it's a very uh, appropriate question to finish our session for today. That is the essential element of Shraddha lacking in most critical Indological interpretations since 19th century? How can Shraddha be revived again? So it's very essential, correct? Because we have lost, we do not understand what the Shraddha mean, uh, metaphorically and also spiritually, and why Dharmashastras or any other dharmic texts require a Shraddha to actually engage with the text in a very creative way, or a very formative way.
Yes, definitely. I think since we are discussing the book, I'll read out from the book on this very section.
Please,
So
please.
I have argued in the book in the introductory chapter that there is a need for Shraddha in studying Dharmashastras. The very point that the questioner makes. I'll just read the section. Contemporary scholarship has largely approached the study of Hindu texts by adopting what is called as hermeneutics of suspicion, wherein one reads the text with a skepticism in order to expose their purported repressed or hidden meanings. Though the hermeneutics of suspicion has its own importance, in matters of understanding Shastra such as Vedas, Smriti, etc., whose subject matter is non empirical, it is completely unsuitable and misleading. Such an approach often leads to rejection of non empirical elements as superstition or poetic fantasy, filling the vacuum thus created with speculations about ideological, political, and social motives of the text. It ultimately results in the undermining of the text and their own self description of their purposes. So instead, one should adopt what we may call as hermeneutics of Shraddha to study Hindu texts. In this method, one approaches the text with faith and respect rather than skepticism, and then attempts to uncover its complete meaning through a contemplative process called Shravana Chatushtaya. This basically Shravana Chatushtaya is a method in Vedanta which starts with Shravana, which is listening to the enunciation of a subject matter or a text from a qualified teacher. This is followed by Manana, or intellectual reflection upon the text and its subject matter until one arrives at a steady conviction. Then comes Nididhyasana, or deeper, one-pointed contemplation on the essential truths expounded in the text, resulting in Sakshatkara, or the actualization of those truths. So in this way, what starts as Shraddha transforms into Sakshatkara. So this is actually the traditional method in the Gurukula method of teaching across all Shastras. So if you take Tenali Pariksha, Shastra Pariksha, etc., they study the Shastra Guru Mukhena, understand it, do the Manana, reflection, then Nididhyasa, etc. Only that will make that whole knowledge, internalize, interiorize that knowledge by the student. So I believe that this lack of Shraddha is the most important aspect, and that is what makes this contemporary academic Indological approaches to our Shastras very problematic, because they are not adopting our method of interpretation, because owing to their skepticism, owing to their primary method being method of skepticism.
Yes, I think you explained it pretty well. So, as a last question before we end our session for today, and we will try to engage and get one more session to actually discuss few more topics. So, in luckily, let's say in 5-10 minutes, if you can just explain to the audience, when we have this title called Dharmashâstra as a first principle and framework. So, what do you mean by principles of Dharmashâstra and the framework? So, how contemporary, like how we can use in our contemporary life, the principles of the Dharmashâstra and the framework that will be engaged with our dharmic texts, as the final question.
Okay, wonderful question. So I started actually working on a new book, basically, which is basically tries to bring out these fundamental questions about principles, frameworks, how to approach Dharmashastra, how to study, what one needs to equip oneself before studying these texts. So, but to put it briefly, what are the principles of Dharmashastra? Is basically the principles of Dharma, the essential teachings of Dharma. And the teachings are many. But if we have to condense that, then Manusmriti at one place says, Ahimsa satyamastayam shaucham indriya nigraham. Ahimsa, satya, asteya, shaucha, indriya nigrah. These are the 5 very basic, very common, very universal tenets that are applicable for everybody. But what is interesting is, they are not only tenets or principles that one can implement in one's life, but they are also frameworks. You can examine your life, examine your society, examine even, for example, socio-political actions, the governmental policies, through these frameworks. Say, take for example, ahimsa. Are our ecological policies promoting ahimsa or himsa towards environment? This is a very, very simple question. Is the government's tourism policy, is it creating more himsa or ahimsa, especially in the context of sacred geographies, be it in Kashi or in Kamakya or any other place? Right? So these are very simple questions. So the same principles of dharma, they can act as principles, first principles in our life on which we align our life, anchor our life. At the same time, there can also be frameworks to analyze the rest of the society. So there are many such ideas, many such insights. There are many maxims on which, through which to lead your life. So at one place, Manusmriti says, how should one acquire dharma? It says, if I remember correctly, it says like an ant. Have you seen how the ant works? It takes very small amount of sugar and does the collection. So it is in the small actions. It is not like throughout my life I lead a life of criminal life and suddenly then I will do one big charity to some temple and everything becomes clean slate. No. The charity, if done with genuine intention, it will give its good result. But charity with ulterior intentions will give no good results at all. More importantly, whether what it was done genuinely or not, it will not wipe away the slate from the adharma that was done. So then how? It is in our everyday actions. We have to slowly give up our addiction to adharma and slowly create affinity and dedication to dharma in our everyday actions. So there are many maxims like this, and there are direct principles. There are many ideas. Say, for example, how we should eat food. Manusmriti speaks about this. How if you eat food with respect, by recognizing the divinity in there, then that food will give you all the strength and everything. But if you disrespect the food, then that will also cause harm to your health. Manusmriti speaks about what are the different kinds of results, the adrishta phala, that you get by eating, facing different directions. If you eat by facing north, you get a certain kind of results. If you eat by facing west, you get certain. So these are there is a host of ideas. It speaks about etiquettes. How we should live, how we should interact with others, how we should behave with our family members, how we should treat our father, mother, our teachers, what kind of relationship we should have with our brothers, how we should treat the female members of the family, maybe mother, it may be your wife, it may be your daughter. There are so many ideas there. So these are all principles, and you can develop framework through these principles. So what are the large macro frameworks, if you ask me, that the same Manusmriti gives us? The frameworks of the four varnas, the frameworks of the ashrama, the varna dharma, ashrama dharma, the varnashrama framework is there. The framework of samanya dharma versus vishesha dharma. It also speaks about trigunas, speaks about karma phala relationship. And there are many other, it speaks about Chaturyugas. These are all very important frameworks to understand life. This ahimsa satyam asteyam, I already mentioned, this is a framework. Each tenet can be a framework in itself. Okay, I hope
Yes,
I answered the question.
Yeah. Actually, you gave also very good examples which actually we can utilize in our lives, because correct, the pramanas that we have, correct, we have prataksha pramana, we have shabda pramana. So there are different kind of pramanas. So like you mentioned, correct. So if we are eating the food, then we first thank the food. I'm eating this, and be grateful for that, and then you consume that food. It is something which is going to give you a good result in terms of your health. But that is something which a Pratyaksha Pramana might not be visible right now. But that Praman might be coming after 30 years when you are older and you have so many diseases in your health. So, but if you tell somebody right now they will say, okay, it doesn't have any impact. Correct? It is false. So that also is there. That how do we use our own frameworks and principles to actually ascertain things rather than just looking at, because the scientific way is only one kind of pratyaksh praman. If you can see, feel, it is real or it doesn't exist. So this one linear way of thinking also has created a lot of dichotomy in us to actually question our own shastras, own itihas, own texts. So thank you, Nitin ji. So last words to you before we end our podcast for today. And in the meantime, I will also share the details of the book on the podcast in the comment section, and we will meet again sometime later.
Okay. So last words is, I appeal all the viewers to buy the book, read the book, reflect upon it, share it with your friends and family. The reason is, it is not just because I have written the book that you have to purchase it. Of course, that is there. Every author is happy when the books are sold. But more importantly, the book has been written to give a fresh perspective on how to understand the Smriti tradition, how to understand the Dharmashastras. Today, everybody speaks about Dharma, this, Dharma, that. Every organization, every individual, every ideological movement, everybody, for everything, we want to put Dharma either in the beginning or in the afterwards. But we don't know what Dharma means. So this book could be your journey into Dharma, an authentic journey, an honest journey, and a journey which will last a lifetime if you are truly honest and if you persist in it. But even if you don't have such long goals, then even then this book will serve as the short primer to understand what dharma is and how, what is the role of the Dharmashastra tradition, what is its use, what is its utility, so that you can make sense of it in the discourse, in the noise that is there in every day. So you can be confident in your own identity as a Hindu, as a Sanatana Dharmi, and have correct understanding of what is the function, what is the role, what is the importance of the Dharma Shastra, of the Smriti Shastras, and how they help one. So do read the book, do share your comments on Amazon, on social media, and you can tag me. If you have any questions, you can always write to me on my email ID, or I'm available on X, Facebook, and LinkedIn also. You can just type my name, you'll get it. So I'll be happy to respond. Thank you again for this opportunity to speak here, and I'll be happy to do another 1 or 2 sessions. I'll be very happy to do that. Thank you very much. Shri Guru Bhyo.
Thank you very much, Nitin ji. We really appreciate you being with us. So, and we will certainly having our next sessions. We have too many questions we need to go through. So, Jai Shri Ram, Vande Mat.
Jai Shri Ram.